Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'm going to be covering the weather for July 3rd of 2023. Currently there is a dual enhanced risk setup for both the Atlantic coast and the north central plains. For the Atlantic coast, we do have that enhanced risk for mostly around the Chesapeake Bay and along the coast of Virginia and Delaware there, as well as Maryland. And then we have another pretty large slight risk that extends all the way from North Carolina up into the New York City vicinity, and then a marginal threat that does extend all the way into southern Massachusetts, all the way along the coast, all the way into eastern Oklahoma across the Dixie states. As for the enhanced risk that's further back towards the north central plains, we do have a enhanced risk for parts of western South Dakota and parts of northeastern Wyoming. The slight risk around that does extend into parts of southern Minnesota as well as into parts of southern Montana. The marginal threat does extend all the way into the Utah Salt Lake City vicinity, and then it extends up and out into Canada through Minnesota and Wisconsin. Taking a look at our threats, we do have two 2% tornado threats for either enhanced risk locations. We do have a 30% wind threat for both locations. However, the North Central Plains enhanced threat does have a hatch significant on it. As for our hail threats, we do have a 15% in either locations, but then the North Central Plains does have a hatch significant on that as well. Taking a look at our pivotal weather models, you can see off the bat both triggers for both locations. You can already see some strong mid-level flow in both locations, but more so towards the north central plains. We still have that shortwave trough that is making its way south out of Canada to trigger severe weather across the north central plains for much of this week, and then as it moves down south, it will trigger severe weather from Colorado into the central plains. I did cover that in the weekly overlook if you want to go check that out, but strong mid-level flow in the 40 knots to possibly the mid 40 knots to low 30 knots, maybe even upper 40 knots is going to be the main trigger for severe weather development back towards the north central plains, enhanced threat, and then back towards the Atlantic coast. You can see a furthermore weakening shortwave trough as it makes its way out into the Atlantic Ocean. This is likely going to be its last day triggering severe weather. This shortwave trough in particular did make last week a very long week in particular, so as it makes its way into the Atlantic Ocean, it's likely not going to trigger severe weather development after that anymore, and it is slowly weakening. However, today it does have mid-level flow in the low 40 knots to the upper 30 knots, which is definitely going to be sufficient enough for severe weather development. Taking a look at the dew points for the North Central Plains enhanced risk, you can see that we do have much more modest dew points and moisture in the atmosphere compared to further out east, like we saw yesterday and a few days before that. We're not going to get crazy, insane instability like we were further out east. We're likely going to get much more modest instability with dew points like this. Dew points that are in the mid to upper 50s and low 60s. That is going to give us much more moderate instability overall, likely in the 1,000 to 2,500 range, depending on our lapse rates. And you can see as time goes forward, I have us situated right around storm development time as storms move through that enhanced risk area. We do have persistent dew points that most likely will stay around those same levels. Taking a look at our lapse rates, you can see that we do have some pretty strong lapse rates. They are in the upper 70s to possibly the low 8s, and probably not going to get up into the 9s like we are getting further out west, as you can see right here. This could affect our instability a little bit, but it's getting into the range where there's going to be much weaker dew points in the 40s out further out that direction. So I don't think lapse rates in the 9s are really going to be effective towards the enhanced risk area, but you can see that we do get a little impulse here of lapse rates in the I think low to maybe the mid 9s. So that could definitely boost up our instability a little bit, maybe getting it up to the low 3000s. However, I think our Cape values are likely going to stay mostly around the moderates. Taking a look at our instability regarding our dew points and our lapse rates, sorry if you might be able to hear my dog in the background a few times in today's video. We have a thunderstorm approaching, so it might be pretty hard to record these last few moments of today's forecast, but hopefully I'll be able to get through it. taking a look at our instability, we do stay mostly around the moderates, as it looks like we do have a few areas where we can see some much stronger instability, but it does look like overall it's going to stay mostly around the upper 2000s range to the 1000s range. Like in Minnesota, you can see a large area of strong instability, and then back towards the center of that enhanced risk region, you can see an area of 3000s to possibly the low 4000s, but because of how small the area of 4000s are, it's likely not going to get up to the 4000s and probably is most likely going to stay in the upper 3000s in that one region. However, it does look like overall in the region in particular, it does look like that Cape values are mostly going to stay in the moderates range, with the exception of a few areas that can get up to the upper levels. You can see after storm development, after storms begin to move through the area, you can see that that area of 4000s does become much larger, particularly in that enhanced risk region. And as storms move through that area, it could definitely help enhance storm development a little bit, as well as with whatever wind shear, help with tornadic development, as well as with the possibility of some large hail. However, after that goes away, it does look like that Cape overall does decrease back down to the 1000s to 2000s range, with not really a lot of sightings of 3000 Cape. Taking a look at the wind shear, you can see that off the bat there is strong wind shear with that shortwave trough as it begins to move out of Canada, and then right around storm development time, after storms have already developed, with that 2% tornado threat in that enhanced risk area, you can see that we do have some fairly strong wind shear. However, with this wind shear, I think a lot of this wind shear is not going to be usable by any supercells that develop because of how strong this wind shear is with the given Cape. We only have a 2% tornado threat, so I think that a lot of this wind shear that we're seeing here is going to be mostly speed shear compared to directional shear. However, I'm not going to take a look at the storm relative helicity today due to the fact that after research, it does not discriminate between the possibility of significant tornadoes or weak tornadoes. So I'm going to stick with mostly wind shear and give my best estimate on the given threats for today. However, I think most of this shear is going to be mostly speed shear, and with that, we can see the possibility of some elongated hodographs and the possibility of some very large hail to develop in that particular region, as well as with the possibility of maybe a little bit of strong low-level shear. However, with the 2% tornado threat, I think, and the elongated hodographs, I think strong directional shear might be a little bit hard to develop and might only be sufficient enough for a 2% tornado threat. Taking a look at the dew points for the Atlantic Coast Enhanced Threat, you can see that we do have some pretty strong dew points. We have, again, almost tropical levels of dew points just like yesterday and the day before that. We have dew points that are in the upper 60s or possibly the mid 70s. This is going to lead to the possibility of some pretty strong instability depending on our lapse rates. If we don't have strong lapse rates, the most that we're probably going to get is probably the mid 3000s to possibly the upper 3000s. If we do have strong lapse rates, they could get up to the 4000s with instability like this. Taking a look at our lapse rates, we can see that we do have some fairly weak lapse rates. We can see that mostly around this area in particular, the enhanced risk area, we do get a pretty large area of some weak 6000s that could allow for the possibility of some more increased Cape compared to everywhere else. However, overall, we do have some really weak lapse rates, so depending on that, we could see the possibility of more medium-sized hail because of that ample hail development area with a strong updraft is going to be much higher in the atmosphere, and it's going to be much harder to get to. However, with instability, we could definitely get up to it, depending on how strong the instability is given the dew points that we have. Taking a look at our instability, you can see right around the enhanced risk area, I think that a large area of some weak 6000s definitely did help boost instability a little bit. You can see right around here where that mass of weak 6000s was, we can see that we do have some upper 3000s to possibly the mid to low 4000s across the Chesapeake Bay. That is definitely going to be possible with a large group of 6 lapse rates and the given dew points. That is definitely going to be possible. However, everywhere else, it is mostly going to be much weaker compared to the last few days in terms of instability. You can see that we do have some fairly weaker overall instability instability along the Atlantic coast. However, even though that this instability is much weaker compared to the last few days, it is definitely some pretty strong instability with Cape values reaching the 3000s or possibly the mid 3000s, maybe the upper 3000s in some isolated areas. However, with the given lapse rates and the given Cape, we could definitely see the possibility of some small to medium sized hail, as well as the possibility of some strong damaging outflow gusts. And with whatever wind shear we have, we could definitely see the possibility of 1 or 2 tornadoes. Taking a look at our wind shear, you can see right around, I think, storm development time and right where that 2% tornado threat is, you can see that we do have a pretty large batch of some overall weak wind shear. However, it is definitely going to be sufficient enough for a weak 2% tornado threat. Right here, where that 2% tornado threat is, you can see we do have a batch of some overall weak wind shear. However, again, it's definitely going to be sufficient enough for a small 2% tornado threat. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And if you live in either of the areas that I covered, make sure you stay weather alert for the time being, and make sure to like and subscribe for more weather content.